Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. So, this episode, I'm going to be discussing the racial apartheid system that the Democrats wish to establish through their vaccine suppression efforts. That's right. So, they want you to show an ID to be vaccinated, and now they want you to have a vaccine passport in order to re enter society. But as we've been told for months and years, voter IDs are inherently racist because people of color are disproportionately affected and it affects their access to vote because they're unable to get a voter ID. So if they can't get a voter ID, what makes you believe that they can get a vaccine and a vaccination passport? Well, I believe it's part of the grand scheme of the Democrats to create an apartheid system in the United States to further oppress minorities. You already see it happening in big Democrat cities such as New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., for example. But before we get started, how about you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. Let's get started. From Cato the Younger. 1984, and a party member, not even the smallest deviation of opinion on the most unimportant subject can be tolerated. And you see this with the left. You see them, they'll eat their own as soon as someone deviates from the norm. As soon as someone in disguise, with Gina Carano, she was in disguise. She was basically hiding amongst the woke because she was an actress. That was her job. And as soon as it appeared that she was not woke, that she was not Democrat, and that she was conservative, what did they do? They canceled her. They destroyed her career. Her agents dropped her. Disney basically did everything they can to cancel her off their platform. 1984 and the Democrat Party seems to be synonymous at this point in time. Jumping over to Luke Rudowski, the Biden administration does not want you to have voter ID, but they want you to have a vaccine passport. Huh. So, during my introduction, I kind of briefly talked about this. So, imagine a society where Walmart requires a vaccine passport for you to go get your groceries, or the local grocer. So, what happens to minorities who can't get a vaccine passport because it is racist and they're unable to obtain that vaccination because they don't have an ID to be vaccinated? If they can't obtain or an ID to vote, what makes you think they can obtain a vaccine or obtain an ID to get vaccinated? It's probably not going to happen. Therefore, they will not have the voter pass or the vaccine passport as well. There's a lot of V's and a lot of P's and a lot of IDs and all this. So I'm confusing it up. Remember, I don't have a script. This is going off the top of my head. So with these vaccine passports, it's going to disproportionately affect the minority community if you believe the mainstream Democrat talking points. So you're going to create an apartheid system. You're going to create a system where minorities, particularly blacks, are going to be unable to work because if they're not allowed to go back into work until they have their vaccine passport, but they're unable to get a vaccine passport, how are they going to work? How are they supposed to eat if all the stores that they're supposed to go to get food requires a vaccine passport? So now you're going to have a bunch of jobless, starving minorities around the country due to these radical Democrat policies, due to these totalitarian big brother policies. And that's bananas. Jumping over to Jordan Schachtel, show me your papers. New York rolls out vaccine passport program. America's COVID social credit system has arrived. That's right, folks. New York has one. But what's interesting about the New York COVID social credit system is they allow a negative COVID test to be used in lieu of the vaccine. So, my personal issue with the vaccine isn't that it's new or that it's mRNA, any of that. That doesn't really bother me. If the science pans out and it says it's safe, then it's safe. However, the science hasn't panned out yet. The COVID vaccines are not FDA approved. They're under emergency use authorization. They are not approved for use by the FDA. They have not gone through the full gambit of trials. So maybe we should wait and see. You're forcing people, you're essentially coercing them to take experimental vaccinations in order to re enter society, in order for them to survive. You're making them be a corporate guinea pig, and that's an issue. And speaking of corporations, these corporations are immune from liability. So imagine if 1 year from now, everybody were to grow a third eye. And remember, this is just an example. If everybody were to grow a third eye who received the vaccination, nobody could sue Moderna or Pfizer because they have liability immunity granted to them by the United States government. You have no recourse. So you're being forced to take an experimental vaccine, which we don't know the long term side effects. And if there happen to be long term side effects, I'm not saying that there are, but if there happen to be long term side effects, guess what? There's nothing you can do to be compensated for your pain and suffering. So maybe one of two things need to happen. Either the FDA needs to fully back these vaccines, they need to fully certify these vaccines and basically say, hey, these are certified vaccinations. We believe wholeheartedly that these work. Or these corporations that are producing the vaccines need to say, hey, we feel so strongly about our vaccinations that we no longer need. Sorry, my dog just freaked out because he's hiding in the closet right now. We no longer need this immunity from liability because we believe our vaccines are so safe and they're so effective that we cannot foresee any instance where somebody would go and sue us. Now, if one of those, or preferably both of those, were to happen, I'd be the first person in line to take the jab. However, since that's not the case, I'm just going to wait this out. I'm going to wait and see. My family has all received the vaccine and they give me a hard time about it. And I say, hey, the thing that bothers me the most is if it's so safe, then why did they require liability immunity from the United States government to basically distribute these vaccinations? Because they're not even 100% sure. They're not 100% standing behind their product. And the only way for them to release them is with the protection of the United States government. Jumping over to Sour Patch Lids. Words fail me. The Amish community is the first in the US to achieve herd immunity to COVID. The Plain community in Lancaster County has become the first to achieve herd immunity, according to a local administrator of a medical center in the area. Alan Hoover of the Parochial Medical Center said that 90% of households became infected with virus when they resumed church services late last spring. As Hoover observed, faith in herd immunity prompted members of community to relax on key mitigation efforts such as masking and social distancing. It's unknown whether achieving herd immunity in 2020 would be beneficial now. Well, it doesn't matter, does it? All this does is prove that herd immunity actually works. If you basically go to church, I'm not telling you to go to church. Again, I don't go to church, as I've said in previous videos, but if you go to events and you get sick, now, if you're unhealthy, if you're obese, if you have diabetes, then perhaps you need to think a little more abstract about how you engage in society, right? But why am I being penalized because your main diet consists of Pepsi and pizza? That is not my problem. That is a you problem. And that's what makes America America. I am not responsible for you being a gluttonous slob. I am responsible. If I am a gluttonous slob, I am in the process of losing weight. I'm thinking about doing a bodybuilding competition at the end of the year. And guess what? I will become probably sickly towards the end of the year if I do decide to actually compete in the bodybuilding competition, because once my body weight gets below about 189 pounds, I'm 6 feet tall, but I'm built like a college linebacker. Once my body weight goes below 189, I start getting sick all the time because I'm just too skinny. I can't maintain body weight under 190, essentially. My fighting weight's probably 195 to 200. That's where I'm just perfect. But that's a conversation for another day, folks. I'll probably be doing. I know a couple weeks ago I was talking about wanting to do, stuff about, culture and all that. And I think one big pillar of that is going to be fitness and diet, because that's extremely important. A lot of Americans kind of fail to just be active nowadays, or fail to even eat right, with the with the with this comfort lifestyle, and food is just one click away on your cell phone. It's easy to overeat, so you just need to keep it in mind as you're eating, I suppose. Again, from Luke Rudowski, Biden is not doing anything. The corporate globalist handlers of his are pushing for policies that work towards their benefit. Just in, the Biden administration is working to develop a vaccine passport that will allow Americans to travel and enter businesses that require proof of vaccinations. Again, this creates an apartheid system within the United States, and this is government backed. This is Democrat backed, because Republicans are against this wholeheartedly. And the squishy Republicans who might be for this are not Republicans. They do not believe in your individual rights. If they believe that you should give some corporation, because to basically rub salt in the wound in this, guys, it's not the government. It's not like a government app like the way the CCP does, which I guess this is a little better than that, but in ways it's not, because this way it's actually the lucrative merger between corporation and state. So it's literally Mussolini's fascism. It's Mussolini's wet dream right now, which is currently happening under the Biden administration. So what the Biden administration is proposing is, hey, we're going to have Microsoft come up with these vaccine passports, or we're going to have Excelsior, I think is what it's called in New York, develop these vaccine passports, or we're going to have Lennox Med create these vaccine passports. So it's going to create that merger, that lucrative merger between corporation and state. And guess what? It creates that 1984 Big Brother system, where Big Brother is always watching you. From Jake Shields, it's amazing there's still people who respect this clown. Fauci, until they get vaccinated, children shouldn't be allowed to play together without masks. There is zero scientific evidence to back that up. And in fact, this disinformation being spread by Dr. Fauci is criminal. One of Trump's biggest failures, in my opinion, is he didn't do what he did best. He didn't do what he did best. He didn't do what made him famous. He did not fire Dr. Fauci. He should have fired Dr. Fauci as soon as he said the American people shouldn't have worn masks, and then admitted to lying to the American people, saying that they should be wearing masks. He should have fired Fauci a year ago, essentially. Everybody's lives would be way better, and there's a possibility Donald Trump would still be president, because for some reason, the fetishization of Dr. Fauci has reached just absurd proportions in the past months. You see drawings of him. Now he's in books, and they sexualize Dr. Fauci for some reason, because he's so handsome. I don't understand the appeal, other than he's anti-Trump. So I guess anything anti-Trump is sexy to these people. It's stupid. From Dana Lesh. So this is a little off COVID, but I feel this is pretty pertinent. This is important, because at the same time they're trying to push these vaccine passports on American citizens, which will make at least 40% of Americans extremely uncomfortable, even if they're okay with the vaccine. So my objection to the vaccine, like I said, is not to vaccines themselves, because I've received a lot of vaccines. My objection to this vaccine is, I object if you're not confident enough in your product to not request immunity from liability, then I'm not going to be confident for you to stick your product inside my body, because I don't know what's going to happen. I have one of those bodies where weird things happen sometimes, and I'd rather not take the risk if I don't have to. However, you're having a government force people to take vaccines when they don't want to, if they want to re-enter society. And while they're doing that, they also want to disarm the society. And it's almost like we have a current day example of why that's a bad idea from Dana Lesh when there isn't a Second Amendment. CBS this morning, government security forces shot and killed more than 60 protesters today in Myanmar. Witnesses say the violence came as the leader of the ruling party said the military will protect the people and strive for democracy. It's a 25-second clip. Let's watch it real quick.
Government security forces shot and killed more than 60 protesters today in Myanmar. Witnesses say the violence came as the leader of the ruling party said the military will protect the people and strive for democracy. Protesters came out, many on motorbikes, defying a warning that they could be shot as the country's generals celebrated Armed Forces Day. Gunshots were fired at the U.S. Cultural Center in Yangon. There were no reported injuries.
So, shot and killed more than 60 protesters. The government did that to their people. And I understand they underwent a military coup. Right now, it's a basically military ran government. However, those people are unarmed. And look what happens to an unarmed population when they're ruled by tyrants. And every day I wake up and the left becomes more and more warm to the idea of tyranny. The way that they want to continue being in power is more and more tyrannical. And it stands to wonder, why do they wish to disarm Americans? Well, probably because once they figure out a way to disarm Americans, they're going to force feed really unpopular policies down our throats. Next story from Morning Answer. Just so we're clear, Democrats believe forcing you to present a vaccination passport to enter a grocery store is totally fine, but asking you to provide a photo ID to vote is racist. I covered this in the introduction, but it's good to know that people are understanding what's going on. This is extremely important. And if Democrats don't understand this argument, and they try to justify this, then they prove just how disingenuous they are. They prove how they're still the party of the KKK, how they're still the party of Jim Crow, how they're still the party of racial segregation, how they're still the party of minority oppression. Like I've said before, I would say both sides of the aisle are definitely bigoted towards minorities, and that's a fact. But it's two different forms of bigotry. From the left, you have the bigotry of low expectations, where they say black people are not smart enough to obtain a voter ID. And then on the right, you have conservatives saying, I am able to get a voter ID. If I am able to get a voter ID, there's no reason for you to not be able to get a voter ID. And if you're unable to receive a voter ID, just ask for help, and I'm more than willing to help you. That's the difference. The bigotry of high expectations, that's what you see on the right, and the bigotry of low expectations, and that's what you see on the left. Guys, this sort of cognitive dissonance that the Democrats are just able to just plow their agenda through is alarming. If they're able to whistle past the graveyard on this, what else are they willing to whistle past the graveyard on? From Aquarian Anarchy, liberals, I sure am glad we got those Nazis out of the White House. Also, liberals, if you want to leave your house, show us your papers, please. Sounds awfully fascistic, does it not? Because that's exactly what they're asking for. They're essentially projecting onto conservatives what they are. They scream that conservatives are segregationists as they are now trying to implement some sort of legal form of apartheid. They claim that conservatives are Nazis as they're now forcing people, the unclean, to show their papers. No different than World War II Germany. You can't make this up. So that's going to be it for today, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Unless the world catches on fire, I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.